Okay, then we will move to item B, which is the discussion and approval of changes to our post-retirement benefits. And first off, I want to thank both Mr. Garter and Mrs. Zardy for all their work that they have put into coming up with the differing options that we have for review. We tasked them with a fairly daunting process here, I guess. But it was a lot of time and effort that they have put into doing this, and not just in coming up with options for us to review, but also for providing staff with a good understanding of, I hope, what these options are and what they mean to our district, both financially for the district, to our students in the district, and also to our staff, both retirees and staff that is with our district yet for a long time. So we really want to be clear on what we're looking at when we do this. We did discuss this fairly well at our retreat that we had just last week, and we did add one more option that we wanted to look at, and I see that has been added, so that's great. I think all of us have been thinking about this a lot, of course, and where we see this leading us. Essentially, I know the consideration is large, both financially for a district, to our students and the programming that we can supply, and also, our main priority also is to our retirees, but to our staff that's existing and that is carrying forward with our teaching staff. So we're very cognizant of what we need to do here for the benefit of our district and everyone that is involved with this. So we really do want to thank Mr. Gorder and Mrs. Zardy for their leadership in this. So Greg has to, well, and I think Greg,
I don't want any of the credit.
Yes. Do you want to go through those? I think we've gone through them, but just as a real good review for us again.
You want to go through them again?
Just very
briefly.
Briefly.
Option 1 is existing language. Option 2 is if you would just change from $1,500 for any new staff member hired to $1,000. You can see the savings thereafter. And I want to emphasize this isn't going to happen. When I talk about these are assumptions. People are going to retire at different years. We know this is going to change. I feel pretty confident that these people in 11 and 12 will retire, although that could change for a few. So we're going to see these numbers here. What happens then, and with these 311 on the step downs that are showing here, I can't predict, but I know that at some point in time in the near future, when I say near, 5 to 10 years, those folks will be retiring. At least hopefully. So you can see the dollar difference here, 1,000. This is a step down. Basically, you're looking at current language for those retiring this year. Those that retire next year would get 4,000, and then 13, 14 through 16, 17 would get 3,000, and then 2,000 thereafter. And then this would change to $1,500 and to $1,000. And again, you see the annual step savings here. And then if you're taking a look at the red, the only difference between these two is actually moving from $1,000. Instead of $1,000, you would offer $1,250. And if you look at that $1,250 versus the $2,000 at 35 years is worth about $70,000. $1,250. Each staff member would be eligible for that for 25 years. If you put 5% interest on that $1,250 for 25 years, you would look at approximately the same dollars, right around that $70,000 mark. So who knows with interest rates, not so good right now, obviously. But if you use the historical reference, about 5%, that's what you're looking at. And then number 5. Basically, current contract language through 6/30/2013, then step down to 3,000 for 13, 14 through 16, 17, and 2,000 thereafter. Again, you can see the savings here. Hopefully most of you have a sheet on it. Take your time moving through it. And then 5 is current contract language through 6/30/2013, and then immediately change thereafter from 4,000 to 2,000. And then current contract language through 6/30/2012, and then step down to 4,000, from the 4,000 to the 2,000 immediately. You can see the savings, and then finally an elimination of all benefits.
I'd also like to thank everyone who did attend the meeting that we had, the special board meeting where everyone came and spoke, where we had several of you come and speak, and that was really appreciated on our part. It was good for us to know the perspectives of differing staff members as we are reviewing this, because it was very important for us to know where our retirees are, the soon to retire are at, where the staff that we have that will be with us a long time. It's quite a perspective and quite a difference, and we really are appreciative of hearing that range of where everyone's at. And they're very individual stories for each of you. And that's very much brought to our mind where we need to be. So we appreciate your input to this process for us. So this
someone needs to jump in the pool here, right?
Yes, we are looking, of course, as this as an action item and to put into effect these new post-retirement benefits. So, where we want to...
Well, I'll go ahead and jump in the pool first. I guess as I look at it, what I see is the challenge that we have is any commitment that we make as a board right now is still subject to some of the dollars that we receive from the state. You may have changes within that may have us have to revisit this. Is that correct in that assumption? Maybe not in this fiscal year, but if we make a commitment now, this may have to be revisited by other boards in the future as they view this, based on what the funding and the levy and other expenses could be. With that said, and understanding that other boards may have to revisit this, I certainly am looking at all of these choices, feel the most comfortable with option 2, which does still have us honor the language that we have for those hired. We still are funding at $1,000 per year for up to 25 years. I understand the savings is much less aggressive than the other options, but I think it's truly showing a savings and still allowing us to keep our commitments to the closest level that we can. Should future boards have challenges maintaining that commitment, then they'd have to revisit it, but I think that assurance that that's where we are today and that's where we'd like to remain committed today is where I'm most comfortable. Cricket's great.
I was thinking more along option number 4, so that we can start seeing some savings a little more immediately. Everybody gives a little, or some a little bit more, but also looking at those retiring this year, giving the people that are retiring over the next 3 or 4 years a little time to kind of catch up for savings, looking forward, and then also the people that will be with us for a while, not taking them all the way down to $1,000, but they would give a little bit too toward this to help make our budget balance a little bit better for this year. And it is going to be, every year there's going to be, I think, different options that we have to look at for the total budget. But I think we need to start seeing some savings sooner.
Jerry, can I ask, do you feel that option 2 offers enough savings?
Well, I think, and I would ask if for where I'm, as I look at 2 and 4, the year 1 and 2 savings are similar. Mm-hmm. It's in year 3 that we see a change. Is that accurate in your read?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm understanding one correctly, what one does is it maintains our language for those hired during and thereafter 7 and 8 school year from 1,500 to 1,000, but then maintains it for 25 years. So there's that assurance that the district and the board is committed to continuing to fund that account for up to 25 years. For what I'm hesitant on, and I don't know the right balance, just as I watch this, that one seems to send the message both with our actions and with our wallets that we very much are invested in the future of the educators we bring in now, and still allows us to preserve the promises that we've made to those that have banked their careers on us, being responsible with the promises that were made before us. I don't see a great answer here. So if I understand it correctly, it's more of an incentive to an educator who's got 25 years left, or who has 20 years left, to say, well, they're going to be funding me that long, whereas option 4 stops funding in year 4, correct? As it steps down. So 4,000, then 3,000, then 2,000, stops funding at that point.
No, then it's
No.
12.50.
No.
Then it stays 1250 thereafter?
Yeah.
And how do we...
Read the language.
That's what I'm struggling with, the language.
Current language contract through 6/30 of 2012. So those retiring this year, obviously, because the contract doesn't expire till midnight on 6/30/2012. So those people are eligible for the current contract. The next group that retire the following year would then be eligible for $4,000 per year of service, okay, for the 12-13 school year.
Up to 40.
Did I say what I said?
You said 4,000, but it's...
4,000 per year service up to 40.
So that continues, and so it doesn't diminish
part of our
your-
current language, right?
All right.
But that option is then only available to that group for that 1 year. Then in 13-14 through 16-7, anybody eligible to retire, meaning the rule of 75, okay, would then be eligible for $3,000 a year for the next through year 16-17. And then anybody who retires after 16-7 would be eligible for $2,000 per year of service, up to 40 years. That language only extends to those who were hired prior to the 07-08 school year. Anybody hired after the 07-08 school year were receiving $1,500 for up to 25 years. And on the red one, we're recommending that's changed from the $1,500 to the $1,250.
Is this red one is this one that was modified from the retreat then?
Yes.
I see, okay.
And I think what we were looking at,
I
Jerry,
apologize,
was-
Judy, I do appreciate that this is, I was appreciating 2 being the closest and not realizing that 4 was a modification.
it was that dramatic difference when you look at the annual savings and between the one, if you're proposing 2 versus 4, and you look at the annual savings starting in year 13-14, given the financial situation. I mean, I guess what we talked about just a little bit ago in the Finance Committee is we've got a situation where last year we received significantly less in equalization aid from the state, 10%, as I understand it. That was very painful. In addition to that, they also told us we couldn't even spend more. We couldn't even go to taxpayers more because of the revenue limits. We were receiving $500 less per student. So on the revenue side of things, we are trapped. We are in a box. And yet on the expenditure side of things, we are now, last year, if you recall, we had to work through over $1 million in cuts. And quite frankly, we were able to do it without laying off people.
The actual cuts were probably closer to 2 to 2.5 million if you factor.
I mean, the teachers did absorb some of that because of what they had to pick up, admittedly. And then we eliminated some positions. And so we've just gone from one year where we had to face $1 million to $2 million in cuts. We've got now a projection that we're going to have to do that again because of at least a 15% projected increase in health insurance costs. And so I guess why, at least it was my impression based on our earlier discussions, that option 2, there's such a dramatic difference in savings that it's not realistic in terms of our rather pressing financial situation.
So what is the real-time difference between 2 and 4? Understanding that in year 3 there's a $63,000 difference. Where is that 63 being appreciated from? Where are we realizing the gain from?
Because in option 2, if you had, for instance, in year 12-13, school year 12-13, the teachers retiring then would have the full benefit of the 7 years of premiums, which could equal, as we've talked about before, $160,000.
I see. Okay.
By going to option 4, where it steps down to $4,000 times an average of 30 years maybe, it's $120,000. Or if they have 25 years, it's $100,000. You're experiencing a difference in what 7 years of premiums would be versus $4,000 times number of years of service, and then that steps down to $3,000. Even the $4,000 is part of the mechanism that's in the current language. So, to some degree, we've tried to maintain even part of that funding mechanism from the existing contract. So I guess I think it was my impression that there was a concern that option 2 certainly would not realize anything close to the kind of savings that we would need to survive in the coming year.
I think we used, as we discussed this and as we listened to people, the word honorable. What can we do that is honorable? What can we do to honor the commitment past boards have made while at the same time honoring the oath of office we made to maintain programs for kids? How do we balance that? And I think all of us would like to be looking at number 2. It's just fiscally, what is going to happen to this district financially? What's going to happen to programs for kids? What's going to happen to classroom numbers? What's going to happen to core educational opportunities if we can't address something? And it just sort of makes me sick to think that where is it coming from? It's coming from our employees, who are the base of that. But we are in a position where doing what's honorable may be salvaging what we can for our employees for the future and still maintaining core educational equity.
That was certainly my understanding of our discussions too. And in number 4, both of those were part of the original contract that we have, and those benefits, either the $4,000 or the current contract language of 7 years of the insurance premium, does sunset at the end of 2013, and that's where at least both of those were options in the existing contract. I think is something that is meaningful, at least, and honoring those retirees and where they need to be for their own individual self to be in a good place for themselves. We also, have struggled with, in hopes that what we are saving here and looking towards the future can be reevaluated and brought back onto the salary schedule to make us as competitive as we can be and to hopefully carry on with what we can provide for our staff as we move forward too. And in my mind too, I'm looking at the realization that we have to recoup some of this a little bit sooner than we'd like, and that's why at least in 13-14 you're seeing that savings step up just a bit, that we're able to hopefully gain something for our students and our staff in those years moving forward out.
And I'd like to say, I mean, I was here when the teachers that made presentations are all here again tonight. They were very compelling things that you said at the previous meeting, and I don't disagree with any of them. I am not of the group of people in the past year that have joined this chorus saying public employees or teachers are overpaid. I don't believe that. I'm not advocating for this because I believe that good teachers are overpaid. I do not believe that. And I'm not doing this to try to save our taxpayers some money. We have a revenue limit, and I can tell you from our finance committee meetings, it's pretty clear that we feel like we can and should spend all the money that we are able to within the revenue limit. But now, functioning within that limit, we have been given this horrible choice. We have retiring teachers, we have existing teachers, and the word honor came up at as Ms. Justinger said, the word honor came up at our retreat, and that's because Mr. Ewers brought it up in his comments. He indicated that the honorable thing was to honor it through the evaporation date. And I understand where he's coming from, and I'd like to say that, you know, beyond the safety and welfare of my family, nothing really means more than honor. And I'm not trying to be overly dramatic, but I've looked at this every different way I can. And if we can save money here, we are trying to use it to maintain the benefits for current teachers. It's not going back to taxpayers. And so, given all the different ways I can look at it, given the options given to me, no one else has come up with a solution that I think is better. I feel like I'm doing what I can honorably do under the circumstances, and I hope at least you can appreciate that. You may disagree with me, but I hope you appreciate, from my perspective, I'm doing the honor, as best I can, the honorable thing, given the circumstances I find myself in. And I'm not going to make excuses for what's happening here. I'm not going to blame it on people in Madison. These are the facts given to me. I think decisive action has to be taken. I'm prepared to make a decision, and if that's unpopular, it's unfortunate, but it may sound hypocritical, but I'm on the teacher's side. I will do anything and find any way to try to get back and give the teachers what they rightfully deserve. But given the current situation, I feel like option 4 is what's appropriate for our district and is in the best interest of the students right now. So I guess having said that, I would make a motion to approve a new post-retirement benefit and adopt the language of option 4 as it's been presented in the handout. Should I read in option 4, it would maintain the current contract language through June 30th of this year, 2012, and then step down to a benefit of $4,000 per year for
Up to 40 years.
for up to 40 years for any teachers retiring in 2012-13, and then step down to a benefit of $3,000 for up to 40 years for the school years 2013-14 through 2016-17, and then step down to $2,000 per year for up to 40 years for those teachers hired prior to the 2007-2008 school year. And finally, step down to $1,250 for those hired during and thereafter the 2007-2008 school year. That's the best I can say.
And this.
And then to add, which will be effective beginning in the 2012-13 school year, and which is subject to change based on the discretion of current or future boards.
I will second the motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second that has been made to approve a new post-retirement benefit, which is option number 4, as listed and as read by Mr. McMullen, which will be effective beginning in the 2012-13 school year, and which is subject to change based on the discretion of current or future boards. And I would look for any further discussion we want on this particular motion.
I would like, first of all, I appreciate Mr. McMullen's very passionate statement, and I agree wholeheartedly. I like the way that you've stated how your family is the only thing before this type of decision, this type of honor that has to come forward. I feel, though, that we are, for the small amount, and truly, when we look at the size budget that this district runs, when we start talking about a $70,000 gain to reduce a $70,000 gain, the promises that we've made are important for us to continue the way that we made them. Someone coming into the district from this point forward will understand what their future is because they're making that agreement as they come in. But our promises previous, I still feel compelled to stay on, and I think 2 does keep us as close to there as we can. I realize there's a motion in a second, and it's just kind of where I guess I sit on it. I still think 2 represents more closely what the spirit of what previous boards have said and what my heart points towards.
The issue with number 2 is that it's the teachers that are here for the long haul that are getting hit. You're going from 1,500 down to 1,000.
But don't we feel that 4 is going to encourage some of our more seasoned educators who otherwise would continue to give our kids their experience? They may leave us sooner looking at that, and we'd lose the benefit of that those years.
I guess when I looked at it, I would say that it comes down to each individual teacher, what they want to do. They may look at it and say, you know, it's better for me to work. I want to work a few more years, and I'll take less, but I will get more. I'll work longer. I'll get more in my retirement fund. So the dollars that you lose up front, it might be a wash. So I
hear you. I just get fearful that our lack of commitment to. Let me say that differently, because that implies that there's an intent, and there is none. I understand that, but our inability to perhaps honor previous promises would make anyone feel uncomfortable that not separating as soon as possible leaves them at risk for future adverse action against their retirement. And I think that, well, That's really where I'm most fearful, is I feel we owe the promise and we owe the commitment to that. And I don't think that 4 is disrespectful to that statement. I just feel 2 better represents it. So I don't think we're doing a disservice with 4. I just feel 2 gives us a better service. I appreciate your statement very much.
Jerry, my concern, just as I look at the potential savings between, I look at 14-15 and 15-16, those are substantial differences. And I don't like the fact that that money is needed to run basic programs. But if we look at potential savings, the difference between $6,500 and $88,900 is pretty substantial. That's a third grade reading teacher. When I look at the difference between $15,000, $16,000, and $12,000 and $128,000, that's a program. And that's where I get really, as I said, kind of sick about having to make the decision. But I don't know if we can put 33 kids in a classroom and expect that teacher to teach them how to read. Those are the kinds of issues that we're dealing with, and they're not very pleasant. But those are pretty big savings.
That was my thought too, Mary. It's as the years go out, in which also we discussed, when we get beyond that 15, 16 and moving on to those teachers that are then getting $3,000 and then $2,000, it does afford them the opportunity to have that money into the HRA and be accruing interest and be gaining something for them as they move forward. It does buy them some time, and we felt that, I guess, in my mind, that's a fair thing. We never know what the future holds. And we don't know, in 2 years, the board may have to change this. Whatever sitting board is here, it all could change again. I don't know. But, in looking at this, we're sure hoping that we can plan this a little further to the future so that there is some stability ahead. And I would fear that with number 2, we may end up changing it sooner than we would want. I would hope this gains us a little bit of stability out a few more years.
And I think it's critical that teachers have the ability to know what's happening for the next 2 years in their lives. The last year has been awful, and not to know what your future is not a good place to put people. That at least gives people the ability to know what's coming with some degree of certainty.
It certainly is a deep problem, and appreciate you people taking it to heart, thinking about it. Is it inappropriate, because we have this huge audience out here tonight, to get an opinion or two from them as to what we're wrangling about?
That's fair.
I think
They're not allowed.
I think we've done that.
They've had their voice. So
This is our decision.
my
It's our
decision is based on that. Well, you got 2 very good points here, Jerry and John. Difficult for me.
I think in year 1 and 2, it's really just a preference item because they're very similar in year 1 and 2.
They are. The one thing that Well, it's still based on the number of retirees we would have in either of those years to know really truly what the numbers are, but the potential is essentially the same. So, okay. Is there any further discussion?
No.
Okay. Then I would look for a vote, and I would call a roll call vote.
Of course you would.
Of course I would.
Just want to vote.
John?
Aye.
Mary Ellen?
Aye.
Gary?
I'm going with the consensus of the committee, which is aye.
Jerry?
Nay.
Judy?
Aye.
Deb?
Aye.
And Pam?
Thank you all again for all of the efforts that have gone into this and for all the input we have had. It's not easy.
Hope the ones in the
And
audience are pleased.
we want this to work the best for our students, our staff, everyone. So we will move forward and do all we can do to make sure things work as well as we can.
What I was saying is, what about their voice in them? Did you hear that?